Hello again everyone, welcome to the third video in the series of videos about embedding ICT and sustainability in geography education. Today I'm going to talk to you about Esri ArcGIS online story maps, and this is a website that you can use with your upper primary students to investigate geography using geospatial technologies. Esri is a company that is the leading provider of commercial, professional geospatial technologies, particularly GIS, so Geographic Information Systems, and that product that Esri provides is used by professional geographers and those in other geography-related fields to make decisions about geospatial information. But the really cool thing is that Esri has made this StoryMaps application or website that we can visit and use it with our students. So what is a story map? Well, it's very similar to the Google tour that you saw in video 2, but it uses a much more complex database. That's why I say it's probably suitable for upper primary learners. A story map is a place-based narrative. So essentially we have a map, and through exploring that map and looking at the information contained inside that map, we can actually tell stories. So a story map includes a story. So that can be text, spatial data or geospatial information. It works on cartography. Now, cartography is the word for map making. We can use it to support media and content. And when we make a story map, the focus is on the user experience. So what do students actually get out of this? Why should we use a story map in our teaching? Well, maps have been used to tell stories for thousands of years. When we look at the map of Europe, for example, we can see that the rise and fall of different civilizations have happened and have been reflected on the various maps created throughout the years. So not only can we tell a geographical story, but we can also tell an historical story as well. Story maps are pretty easy to create, and even better, story maps comes with a gallery of pre-made story maps. So you actually don't even need to make one. I'm guaranteed that there'll be one that will be of use to you in the gallery. So it is an opportunity to create them with students, but you can also use it as a teaching tool for instruction. Story maps also serve as a way of addressing cross-curriculum needs. As I said, you can talk to history and geography and a number of other cross-curriculum priorities. Here is an example, and I've just put up the tiny URL because the full URL is really long. But this story map is about the oceans, and it's really quite interesting telling the story of the oceans and particularly around sustainability. So that's something you might want to look at in your own time. Story maps are inquiry-based, so remember inquiry is the main pedagogical approach we want to emphasize in geography education. They're interactive and they're also really exciting. There's a lot of cool stuff in story maps that you can have a look at. It really is about that integration of 21st century skills into the classroom. Now, these could be workforce skills, but they can also be skills in using ICT. So being able to manipulate a geospatial map is a skill that our students will require in this 21st century. As I said, there's a range of ready-made resources, which means that cuts down on a lot of your planning and preparation time, although there is certainly the opportunity for you to create your own resource as well. I've written here that it also offers extension opportunities, and that's certainly the case with your upper primary students. So you might, for example, use a ready-made material, a ready-made story map with your students, but also offer the challenge of creating a story map on their own. So offer your students those opportunities as an extension. I've actually added to Milo a step-by-step guide to creating story maps that you might actually find very useful in that regard. So StoryMaps is accessible by desktop and on web browsers on iPads and tablets. So it's very easy to come across the technology that you need to use ArcGIS in the classroom, particularly in this age where schools are moving to bring your own device or BYOD policies. And you might find during prac that you are at a school where there's a BYOD policy in place. And I encourage you to make the most of those resources available to you. So I'm just going to show you a couple of the ready-made story maps that are out there. This one is about where does Australia import its food from, and particularly in the Year 6 HAS curriculum, we're looking at Australia's relationship with countries outside of Australia. So we're looking at the interconnections and the relationships that are global in scope. So this one, for example, looks at where does Australia import its food from? I will have a look at these for us in just a moment, but as you can see, it's basically a map that we have here that's attached to information. It's attached to information about the types of foods that are imported and also the highest volume of food imported and where that comes from. So just looking at this first one that we can see on the screen here, we've basically got where do we get our unprocessed fruit and veggie from? Well, we get the most of that from the United States, and we can see that both in the graph and also on the story map, so the actual map that sits behind this. So I'm just going to flick to the actual map so we can have a much closer look at this one. Okay, so here we can see the actual map, the actual story map in the story map application. So you can see that it's a website hosted by Esri Australia, and as I click on the tabs, we can see that the map will change as it reflects the data that's available. So if we look at fruit and veg processed, we can see that New Zealand actually becomes our #1 source of imported fruit and vegetables that are processed. Similarly, when we look at meat, again we've got another shift and we can see that we're back to the United States as the country that we import most of our meat from. And I might also look at processed seafood. And really interestingly, we can see a shift again. This time the #1 destination or the #1 source of our imported seafood, our processed seafood, is Thailand. So there's lots of interesting conversations you can have with your students there about where their food comes from. And I think you could certainly ask students to consider why it is that we source our food from overseas countries and get into those deep discussions about food production and sustainability in Australia. Another one that's really interesting that I'm just going to open up now while I've got these open is, and it's particularly of relevance to those people who might be teaching in Tasmania, is a story map that's been produced here in Tasmania. So it's exploring and appreciating the landscape of northwest Tasmania. This one's quite interesting because not only does it have your map where your information or your data is tied and displayed on the map, but we've also got examples of remote sensing as well. So in each of these ones you can see a video in the corner, and that video is actually a video of aerial photography, so a form of remote sensing of geospatial technology, and you can see the different routes of that aerial photography. Then you can show your students, which is quite interesting for examining and describing the characteristics of places. Finally, here's another one, and again I'll provide the links to these as story maps, but this one's an interesting one about super tall buildings, and it's surely going to be one that will engage your students in discussing why we have these megacities and why people are interested in creating or building these massive buildings. So it basically, this one follows a slightly different format in that you can scroll down the side here, which will give you information about the tallest buildings. And then we'll come to our geospatial map. So information is contained in that text box on the side, but you can also see where these locations are related to where they actually sit in the physical world. And we can zoom in and out and see that this is obviously in New York, and we can see the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building location. So as I said, these are really interesting resources that you can use for teaching geography. You can also create your own, and certainly you can develop your own by logging in, which you can see here. So you need to set up your own account. There's also a gallery in StoryMaps that you can use, and as you can see, there's a wide range of potential story maps that you can use with your class. Not going to look through all of those, but obviously you can see that there's quite a lot of information here, but you would need, I think, to be very considerate in the way that you choose your resources. A lot of this is probably aimed at that secondary school level, so needing to be aware of what interests engages your students, and also their ability, so where they're at the moment in relation to their geography learning. In the next video, Kim Beasy, who is also a PhD candidate here at the university, is going to talk really specifically and explicitly about the place of sustainability in the Australian curriculum and how you can use the cross-curriculum priority of sustainability to talk about geography and geography education. Thanks everyone for viewing the series of lectures. I wish you all the best for your assignment.